life is that you think about something, you dream something up, and then you plan it, and then people come, and it really happens.
It's amazing.
It is. It's so exciting. I'm so happy to see all of you. I think I met most of you. I'm Megan. This is my house. And these are my sisters. And this is my son who just did our food for us. So we could give Lane a shout out.
Can I be the adopted sister? And because I can't help but promote, Lane might be available.
Yeah, you can get my contact.
I
do
just
private events.
can't help myself. Okay.
He is kind of the best.
You're welcome.
Oh, look, and Hamish.
Hamish is gonna check.
Hamish is the centerpiece.
Anyway, so this is even more exciting for me. I've been one of those COVID ultra reclusive people, so we have not had very many parties or events, so it's even more fun to see everybody gathered here. Thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to introduce myself real quickly because I don't know everybody here and you don't know me. My name's Megan, and I'm a writer also. I write memoir, and I do author interviews, and I teach international workshops on Zoom. And one of the things I love more than anything is interviewing authors, especially memoirists, because there's just a way of really getting to the heart of a backstory and a craft story and a love of writing story that when I interview writers, it really comes to life. So I do written interviews. They've been published in a lot of literary journals and other journals, but I think this is kind of my first live interview. So that's very exciting for me. And as Joanne mentioned, Jen and I met in graduate school at Vermont College of Fine Arts in 2017. We were both
2015.
2015. You graduated in 2016.
We met over a tea bag, Pete's Earl Grey tea bag.
She chased me down in the cafeteria.
Flew in from Israel, see this woman sitting across the cafeteria, take a Pete's Earl Grey tea bag and dip it into hot water. And I went over, I'm like, where did you get that? And we've been friends ever since.
They don't make it anymore, right, or something? Is that
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
I brought a box with me, and I did give you some, as
Yes,
I
you did.
recall.
Thank
Yeah. And then Jen and I were in workshops together, and then I met you through Diana. Diana introduced us.
We met on the mountaintop hiking.
Yeah, hiking, exactly. And then in addition to these two women, I've known both of their books since before their books were born. So I'm kind of like an auntie to their books. That's what I was thinking about this morning. I knew you before you were born. I read a lot of pages of both of these books and had lots of conversations, and it's really exciting to me to see these books in print, and having an ISBN number is just super exciting, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
I should memorize it.
That's true. So as some of you are writers or have taken a stab at writing, or you read a lot or whatever, one of the things that writing requires is a lot of perseverance. And it's not just the perseverance of, there's writing the book, right? I mean, that alone, just sitting your butt down and getting the words out, and day after day working on the same thing, and kind of boring yourself to tears with your own words, but then trying to elevate above that because you really have a fire about a message that you want to get out there. But there's editing, and there's titling, and there's publishing, and there's marketing, there's social media. There's just so much. And Jen and Joanne both each have a story of intense perseverance with their books. And I'm in awe of both of you with the work that you've done and your, I made a list of, your diligence, your faith, your energy, your tenacity, your self-belief, your vision, everything that was required to get your books out into the world. And especially today, it's just a lot. So, how about a round of applause just for that part? Just for all of those great attributes. I also have to add one more thing. Jen is a yoga teacher, and everybody's required to have a really good posture when we're with Jen because it'll upset her if we're not sitting up straight. So, yeah. So I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing this evening. Jen and Joanne are each going to do a brief reading from their book. And then I'm going to ask them a few questions just to get the party started. And then you are going to get a chance to ask whatever questions you have about anything, the subject of the book, the process of writing a book, what went into publishing the book, how they feel now that the book is published, what they're going to write next, what they ate for breakfast. You can ask them anything you want. And then after that, Jen will be on one couch, Joanne will be on another. We were going to be outside, but I think it's too windy. And we're going to give you guys an opportunity to buy a book, have a book signed, or have a one-on-one conversation with each of them. I just ask you to keep those conversations not too long so that, people have a chance. If there's anyone who really is wanting a one-on-one, which is great, you can do that. And then there's more food and more drink and all that. So, you know what? I forgot to ask Jen and Joanne who wanted to read first. We were so busy.
I'm reading first. Okay.
And maybe you want to tell us where in the book you're reading.
Yeah. I'm going to read two different little excerpts, but I'll tell you what happens before that. So as the book begins, my book begins, actually, you know what? I'm going to read you the first 3 paragraphs of the book so you can know where it begins. As I step into the crosswalk, there's a sudden deafening sound. An explosion, maybe? Then I'm airborne, thrown onto the hood of a car. What the hell? I silently scream to the universe, or God, or no one. Seriously? All I can hear is an ear-splitting cacophony. All I feel is wild, uncontrolled movement. Stop the car! Stop the car! The car is catapulted down North San Pedro Road, my head banging against its windshield. I slip off the hood onto the ground, alive. I can't move, can't speak. I lift my head and blink my eyes a few times. Things come into focus. To my right, people crowd the sidewalk, staring at me with their mouths open in horror, like in Munch's painting. I hear someone yelling, "Oh my God, oh my God!" I slowly turn my head in the direction of the sound, but see nameless faces. Cars are turned in different directions. People are running toward me. I'm lying splayed in the middle of the street and feel my short cotton print dress hiked up, naked thighs on display, like that matters. I keep blinking, but the scene doesn't change. And then I end up at the emergency room. And the beginning of chapter 2 is kind of foreshadowing of the whole rest of the book, so I'm just going to share that paragraph. Being hit by a car is not my first blow, although it's probably the most literal. And it won't be my last. But it will be a catalyst for me, a sudden graphic stop to my constantly in-motion existence, my need to produce and achieve to feel worthy of love, my need to control everything because I've believed that it would make me safer. It will be the test that finally teaches me that my needs are masks and that control is an illusion. I've had plenty of opportunities, losses, hard ones, to learn to let go. But I grieved my losses and went right back to my old ways. The accident has stripped me, made me totally dependent on others, put cracks in my bones and revealed cracks in my armor. I can't go back to my old ways, not easily anyway. Over time and through a series of other physical and emotional challenges, I will discover that losing control can be the best way to truly gain it. Letting go means letting in light. Revealing my true power, revealing my real power, and finally feeling that deep sense of peace that I'd been desperate to find. And one more, because I think I'm still not at 5 minutes, am I?
I'm not, yeah.
Am I good?
The hook comes,
No, it's soon. This is a little bit later. I don't know what to do with myself, lying here in bed hour after hour. The silence is torturous. If I can't do things, my mind starts to spin out. Keeping busy has always been my default. to avoid an emotional downward spiral. Now, with nothing to do, I keep replaying the accident, the crash that sounds like an explosion, the terror of being on top of a moving vehicle, lying on the street in shock. This isn't new. Quiet has always been my enemy. I was at a Buddhist meditation session in Chicago during college, squirming, aware of every passing second, suppressing the urge to run out the door. Eastern religion sounded good, but the silence was unbearable. I'm a doer, always busy. I fill time by getting things done, but now I couldn't get things done if I wanted to. Don't have the strength. Can't concentrate. If I could, I would send thank you notes, like I did after Mom died, and after Raina died, and after Bob died. Those back-to-back losses, especially Mom's and Raina's, only 5 months apart, felt like Groundhog Day. Write the eulogy, place the obituary, deal with the mortuary, schedule the funeral, repeat. There were so many tasks that had to get done, and it didn't matter what kind of shape I was in, I just handled it. The grief could wait. It was always right there, bottled up just long enough to give everyone else space to have their reactions. The grief would explode in moments where I least expected it. Driving in the car or trying to go back to work too soon. A wave would reduce me to a quaking, crumbling, wailing shell of a human at the mercy of sobs coming from a place so deep I thought they might never end, and I'd close my office door for a chance to catch my breath. Months had passed, yet the grief was still debilitating, and I was embarrassed because it showed. Felt weak. Food and sleep felt like the needs of a former self, the self who knew her place in the world. Cumulative loss can turn you into a shell of yourself. Just one more sentence, but I kept moving. Choose life, Jewish tradition tells us. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
So my little book is called Places We Left Behind, a memoir in miniature. And a lot of it is written in what I call experimental prose. So there's a strong visual element to the pages. So I'm going to read to you from the more traditional prose. This is the second chapter called Conjunctions. After making love on his mismatched sheets, Philippe and I tally how many times we've each been to Israel. I count my trips. 1971, 1975, 1981, 1983, 1984, 1985, 1988, and now in 1989, needing both hands. He counts his on one hand, 3. You win, he says, as if we're competing. I scan his room. No posters, no mirror, no nightstand. So boyish and beautiful, especially his bed. Tell me everything, he says, adorning me with butterfly light kisses. My tendency to share too much too soon makes me hesitate. He already knows that I'm here despite the first Intifada, or Palestinian uprising, between a job in France and graduate school in New York, to immerse in Hebrew as well as to spend time with my only sibling and extended family, and that I miss my open-minded, California-born parents in the San Francisco Bay Area, but he has no idea that I made a Jackson Pollock mess of my love life the past 2 years and promised my mother that I wouldn't fall in love and stay. No, wait, I want to know why you're here, I say, running my fingers through his silky chestnut hair. What made you immigrate? Israeli chutzpah, Haifa, the Mediterranean, beach, body surfing, falafel, spicy food. Plus, my brother plans to make Aliyah too. We each have one sibling. Mine immigrated to Jerusalem, my temporary home base, immediately after college a few years earlier. And since Aliyah comes from the verb la'alot, which means to go up, I went up in my Jewish observance. Tu comprends? Do I understand that he changed his lifestyle for a country? Absolutely not. All weekend, I study this man, admiring how his pointy nose dominates an angular face, his olive skin glistens with oily patches, and his feet have white lines underneath his sandal straps. All weekend, he reaches for me, amorous and solicitous of my attention. Ever since we met at a Shabbat retreat for Francophones 144 hours earlier, I haven't stopped thinking about him, convinced my secular mother will tell me it was beshert, Yiddish for destiny, after enrolling me in a pilot French program when I was 6. Philippe fits every box on my imaginary list. French, check. Jewish, check. Smart, check. Single, check. Sexy with a guarded smile, check. A far cry from the men of late. One Catholic Parisian whom Sib refused to acknowledge. One Russian married man who my parents refused to discuss. One once upon a time college friend who refused to commit. Burrowed in Philippe's biceps, I try to block out the conjunctions. If he wasn't Sabbath observant, and he wasn't enwrapped with his new homeland, but he is.
More.
Yeah.
Buy the book! Pang. One Friday morning, we ride a bus to Hadar, a working-class neighborhood halfway down Carmel Mountain, to Shabbat shop at the Shuk. Everybody says Haifa resembles San Francisco, Philippe says. He's never been to the city by the bay, or to the United States for that matter, but I've heard many Israelis liken the two. Both share steep, windy streets and water, but all similarities end there. Out the bus window, I glimpse a neglected port, power plant, oil refinery, and random towers next to dilapidated buildings under puffs of pollution. Incomparable vis-a-vis the fog-enveloped Vermilion Golden Gate Bridge, cable cars at little engine that could pace, and Coit Tower aglow from miles away. A pang of homesickness stings like a hornet. One more.
Yeah.
Cocoon. On September 13th, 1993, we bring home our 4-day-old son from the hospital. With the crib in one room and oodles of baby presents in another, our spacious apartment bursts. Philippe urges me to rest, but I can't. All I want to do is gaze down at my infant and up at the television screen. On CNN, Israeli Prime Minister, okay, I get super emotional, sorry. Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO leader Yasser Arafat extend arms for the first public handshake between the arch-enemies, with U.S. President Bill Clinton at their sides. I stretch out on our autumn-colored sofa. My baby, his eyes pinched closed and his lips puckered, sleeps, oblivious to the words of import. While Clinton speaks, I stroke the wisps of downy hair on his head, overcome by the thought that I've made this helpless, perfect being, that it's my job to protect him. When Rabin speaks, I feel tears prick the edges of my eyes, burdened by the thought that I've settled in this sliver of land where the personal and the political are tangled, inseparable, insufferable. As these world leaders stand on the White House lawn in Washington, D.C., thousands of onlookers applaud. For months, I've been reading, listening, paying attention to the news. Watching these groundbreakers, I wrap myself in a cocoon of illusion, believing that when my child grows up, he won't have to serve in the army, believing there won't even be one. Okay, my Kleenex is on the other side of your house. That sucks.
Here, I happen to have one right here.
Thank you.
Let's just bring the whole box.
How old is that son now?
He's 30 and he served in the army. I'm done.
Here's the box.
30.
Okay, can you just pass that back to my sister in case she wants to take some photos?
And him?
Oh wait, do you know how to get into my phone?
Oh, now we're all gonna know.
Oh, one of them is that number you love.
Let's see.
Sorry, everybody.
Oh, I could have guessed.
Yeah.
Megan, I'm getting pictures.
Oh, you are? Oh, okay. Oh, good. I thought you were just okay. Never mind.
He's a multitasker.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies, for. I have chills from both of your readings. So, okay. So here's the first question I want to ask you. I talk to my students a lot about how writing memoir is really different from telling a story at a cocktail party. because, well, I'm not going to go into because. I'm just going to say that we talk about this a lot. And so I'm wondering, from your point of view, as writers who have now accomplished an entire book, what would you say the difference is between oral and written communication when you're dealing with memoir? You know, what's the difference between sitting here with me and telling me a story versus putting it down on paper?
You mean besides the thousands of hours?
Yes.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Sure.
Pardon me?
I sit like this all the time. Is it going to look weird if I also do that?
I'm more comfortable like this than with my feet
I am
dangling.
Too. I am too.
Go ahead. I could do it too.
Okay, go.
Wow, I can't do lotus. Craft is the word. So I worked a lot from old journals and old photo albums and letters that my mom, my aunt, and one of my very dear friends had sent back to me for my writing. And those letters let me become reacquainted with my younger self, which was key to my story. I actually went in and changed my outlook on Israel because of those letters. I spent decades blaming my husband that I was in Israel because of him, but in fact, I had my own love for the country. I was grappling on my own before meeting him with should I stay in the country. Craft, there's no comparison. So when I tell a story, which you pointed out earlier at dinner, I just talk and talk and talk, and I have a tangent here, and I go off here, and I'm absolutely not concise, and I put in a lot of details. And then when I write, I maybe start from that place, but I don't think so, because I have a really effed up process. I'm really glad I censored myself right now.
They would have been shocked.
Well, we're on film, so, you know. I go sentence by sentence. I don't actually go to the next sentence until I've really got a sentence that I love.
Is that what you mean by an effed up process, that you go sentence by sentence?
Yeah, because I don't just get it out on the page and then work on it. I go sentence by sentence, so it's painstakingly slow. I don't get thousands of words done in a day. Mm-hmm. I'm lucky if I get hundreds of words done in a day. So it's craft.
So you're really crafting as you go.
Yeah, for the good and the bad. I don't think most people do that.
And then when you go back to that work the next day and look at it, are you happy with it most of the time?
Or Depends. I actually read my work aloud when I get to the very end. Mm-hmm. And in the reading out loud, I hear repetition, I hear clunky, I hear too many somethings, maybe adjectives or adverbs, or not enough.
But like, what helps you keep your eye on craft while you're writing?
Everything.
Well, I mean, but what is that? Is it the sound of it? Is it the rhythm? Is it the musicality? Is it that you're varying your sentence lengths? Is it like, are there things that you're looking at as you go?
I think all of that actually comes later. I think that comes more in revision.
Okay.
I think in the beginning, it's just trying to get the story out in a way that is going to keep moving forward and not repeat and repeat and repeat, and be interesting and have a narrative arc. I mean, it's just, but all that other stuff is super important, but it comes later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. It's interesting that what was one of our advisors at school said there are two kinds of writers there. What does he call them?
The pantser and the planner.
Yeah, or the tinker. He called it the tinker and the something.
That
right, the planner is someone who plans everything else. No, he talked about the tinkerer versus the person who just spills everything out versus the tinkerer. And you're a tinkerer, according to him, because you perfect each sentence as you go.
And that's a Virgo. Anyone else in the room? Anal, perfectionist. Yeah.
Do you literally wait to write the second sentence after the first? Like, what if the ideas go while you're doing the first sentence?
So first of all, I'm slow, and I'm slow on every level. I mean, like, I'm a quick thinker in a way, and quick comebacks, but I'm slow. So I have one sibling with whom I have tremendous issues, and he used to really go at me, and probably still present tense, and I would always be slow to respond. I feel like writing is my response. It's taken me all of these years to finally respond. Yeah, I don't know if that answers that question.
Oh,
Sorry. Okay.
no, that's
I was
okay.
thinking the same
What?
thing. Do you hold, so you have the ability to hold your story over here while you're working on the sentence, or do you lose your,
No, I
know your story already?
think I know my story. I think I must, because I would never remember otherwise. Because I'm 58.
Because you're a baby. Rachel, did you want to ask a question?
We're so impressed.
She did.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
Rachel's one of my students.
I know. Yes.
Oh, no,
Everyone else would have 2 pages. And I'm
Yes.
like, okay, I've got 3 sentences.
Yes.
They're really good.
Oh my God, Rachel hates me.
I know it's my response. I know.
So I don't know. Do we want to go like this?
Yeah, I'm going to just finish my questions and then, yeah, hold on.
that one.
Yeah, hold that one. Yeah.
Write it down if you can't remember.
But this is really interesting to me because I used to write like you, and now I don't. I just throw shit out on the page and then I go back and massage it. And it's because I lose stuff if I don't, because my mind works so fast. So it's really interesting. Okay, Joanne, what about you?
Well, I would say for me, craft, absolutely. I had to learn the craft of memoir. I had always been a writer, but I was primarily a journalist, where you keep your personal opinion and your feelings out of it. So a good journalist is giving you the facts and the story and the background, but you don't necessarily have to build in a universal takeaway, for instance. So what I learned about memoir and what was hard for me was not only learning to make the reader feel like she or he was right there, that they could feel it, smell it, hear it, taste it, get the chills with me, but also that they could see themselves in what I was writing. And so that's where I really feel like I've had some success, because some people who I think are very different than me have told me that we are exactly alike, having read my book. So I think, well, I guess that's good, right? That they saw themselves in there. So it was about keeping to a theme, always having to remember that everything had to relate back to the themes. That some stories, while they're great stories, don't belong in this book. And there's a phrase called, killing my darlings, which is, you work and you work and you work and you, and then you have to get rid of them, you say goodbye, XXX, delete. And when I was first writing the book, I thought it was going to be a very different kind of structure. I thought it was going to be a braided memoir where every other chapter would be this narrative of what happened after the accident, and the other chapters would be from other parts of my life. And it didn't work. I just, after writing the whole first draft, it didn't work. And many of the stories that I had in there just are no longer in there. And things that I might have gone through that I thought were important in my life didn't make sense to put in any book, much less this book. So it's a lot. It was a lot of that. I don't know if that answers your
No, that
question.
is, and some of that is like the cocktail party story versus what belongs in a book. And, then comes the next question, which is, well, how do you know when you're sitting and writing a book? Where do you get that sense of, I've hit a home run here, or this does belong and I just know it? There are writers who give themselves chills while they're writing, and there are writers who make themselves cry. Like, I know when I make myself cry when I'm writing that I have done something really important. It doesn't happen that often. But so then how do you know, even with everything you guys have just said, how do you know, I've done it? This is it.
You go first.
Well, I relied on experts because there was a point at which I thought this book would be for my family and close friends, and I would, self-publish and print 100 copies and give them out, and I kept working and working and working and learning more and more and more, and taking like a how to write a memoir class, and working with various writing teachers and coaches, including yourself. And at some point I decided, oh, maybe this could be good. Maybe I should try to make it as good as I can make it. And so I relied on people to tell me. And in particular, when I spoke to Brooke Warner of She Writes Press and said, would you publish my book? Because I had worked with her for a while. And she said, yes, if you hire a developmental editor and write the whole thing all over again. And I said, absolutely, because I know it's going to be better. And I worked with a woman who I've yet to meet. She lives in Ohio. The whole thing was on Zoom. And she was extraordinary. And she absolutely made my book infinitely better. Yeah.
It's the best when an editor makes you sound even smarter than you are, right? Yeah.
Like,
that's a
for
good
instance, and I'm
editor.
going to give her credit for this, that line I read to you when it leads up to, where'd it go? Not that one. That one. Can't concentrate. If I could, I would send thank you notes like I did after Mom died. She said, that was way later in the book. She said, move that up front and have that be the thing where we learn about your losses and say, and Raina died, and Mom, I wrote it, but she moved it and said, don't even hint about that. Because the reader's going to get there and they're going to go, 3 deaths in a row. Right.
Pacing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called Plant and Return.
Plant and return, yeah.
You want to add anything, Jen?
I think
Or-
that was great.
Okay.
Then you get the next question.
Okay, so Joanne said something about structure, and that's one of my questions that was going to come later, but I'm going to ask it now. So, I love talking to authors about structure, and you guys did really different things with your book. You did a much more traditional, linear structure, managed the time. You had some flashbacks, but you kept moving us forward in time, and it was a traditional narrative. And Jen, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at Jen's book, but it's really, each chapter is a page. It's really playful. She does a lot of hermit crabbing, which is when you write and you take your material and climb into another structure, like hermit crabs climb into different homes and shells. And so she did all kinds of really, unique and interesting stuff. So, why don't you start and talk about your structure, Jen? Joanne talked about hers a little bit because she talked about how she was going to do a braided situation first and that didn't work. And so you abandoned that. But where did you start and how did this structure come to life?
I started where I had a really, really boring, capital B, like 90,000 word traditional prose, overwritten, probably too many tangents, maybe more like at a cocktail party, not as crafted version. When did you read it? 2016-ish. 2017.
2017.
And I didn't like it so much, but Megan and I swapped manuscripts. And in January, I was here, we swapped, and and then I flew back home and we had a call, and, right? It was a call. Mm-hmm. And in early of 2018, we gave each other feedback, and Megan said, how honest can I be? And I said, really honest. No. I love honesty. Are you kidding me? This is great. And she said 2 things that really changed everything for me. One was, I think you're asking the wrong question. I'm actually not sure what version you looked at, but let's just say it was this one. I think you're asking the wrong question, because every memoir is asking a central question. And well, this was different, but all part of the feedback, which was I was starting to wonder if the narrator maybe has a problem because she has, on the outside, she's got everything. She's got a husband, she's got 3 kids, she's, got this life where she gets to travel and live in different places, but she, kind of looks at life as glass half empty. Like maybe she's depressed. And the narrator was me. And I got off the phone and I metaphorically went to look in the mirror, or can I use that way? I hate metaphor. I went to look in the metaphor mirror. I looked in the metaphorical mirror.
There you go. That's it.
Help me!
She hated metaphor in grad school, and she still hates it. It's hysterical.
It's not so funny to be me. Okay, so basically, I looked in, the mirror, and I felt like I understood 2 things. This manuscript wasn't working, which I think
you needed antidepressants.
And I needed an attitude shift. I needed an attitude change. And I heard her, and it was so good. And it wasn't the first time someone had kind of said this to me. And it made me really look back at, the way I came across to people. And I think also what it did was it made me look, and I might get teary again, at my mom, who is in Oakland, 85 and a half today, and kind of a kvetch, like big time. And I've spent the last kind of 15 years grappling with this woman who I didn't see like that when she was younger. I would never have described her like that when she was raising me. But she's cantankerous and curmudgeonly. And I don't want to become like that. All she does is bitch. And she's the victim. And I just felt like I was having this girlfriend who I really trusted as a writer, as a friend, as like the sister that I don't have. So I've actually joined your family. Just P.S. I'm changing my name tomorrow. And I needed to do something about that. And it was huge. So both of those things were just huge. I forgot the question.
That was a great answer.
I forgot the question.
It was how you landed on your structure.
Yes. Okay. I'm so sorry. So I'm not a comedian. So I changed gears. I actually, in the early January of 2018, I took an online, in Israel. So, I don't have access to the classes you do or like great teachers that you have. And I took an online class called Fast Flash with Kathy Fish. I was really getting into short prose. I'm not sure what the original impetus was, but this class rocked my world for 10 days straight in asynchronous time. This is pre-COVID, so I don't even think we knew that word then. We did 10 different prompts, and each prompt had a very, very strict word count limit. 300 words, 400 words, 500 words, 250 words, 100 words, go back in a month and cut it in half. Like really amazing exercises. And everything I wrote was about Israel. And so I'm sharing with this group of total strangers and probably not a lot of Jews in the virtual classroom who all gave me feedback about how incredible my little Israeli life was, how fascinating it was. And I hope you're writing a memoir in Flash. So that's where I changed gears, was there. Between our conversation and that class, which followed that same month. And I got my manuscript to 65,000 words, and then I re-asked myself the question, what is my journey? That's what she asked me. What is your journey? And I changed the question, which made me realize I was starting in the wrong place and telling the wrong story. So this book, this is a very long-winded answer, the way I tell stories. This book is the material I cast aside when I started anew after my conversation with Megan in 2018. I started in 2011 in landing in Israel for my 3rd time with a husband with 3 kids, one going into the army and 2 teenage daughters who didn't want to be there. The girls didn't want to be there, the boys did. And I started a whole new document, a whole new manuscript, called it I forget what. And then this material this was the early material of my marriage, so different. This was not my journey, but more our journey. I went back and found it late in the game, 2020, when a friend who I've never met, a writer in her 80s, I think she's turning 80 this year, lives in San Diego. We swap work. Her name is Alice Lowe. She's not on social media. She emailed me and said, I'm submitting short pieces for chapbook prose competitions, nonfiction. I think you probably have pieces that you might want to look at and link by theme and enter the competitions. And I went back into my early materials and put it together. It didn't look like this either, but I went back and found it, put it together, kept it separate from the story starting in 2011, which is my second book coming out in a year from now, October 15th, called Landed, a Yogi's Memoir in Pieces and Poses. So this story is 1989, meeting my husband in Israel, to 2011, the day we left New York and boarded the plane back to Israel. It ends, and then the second book starts in 2011, and it's my 7-year journey in Israel, finding peace.
Soon to be a mini series, I think.
But that was long, that answer. Sorry.
That's all right. We're talking. We're not writing. So, you don't have to craft your answers. Okay, let's see. I think you guys have answered all my questions now. I want to talk about your titles. I want to talk about, titles are a giant head scratcher for writers, and coming up with a title that's going to be, memorable, sexy, suggest the main theme or themes of the book so people kind of know what they're grabbing off the shelf. And then if somebody, I don't know if you guys have had this experience, there's some book I read recently, and I read it for book club, and you know what? I could not ever remember the title. Rachel, we read this book together. I still can't remember the title. Like, it was that book we read that nobody liked. You didn't come to book club that night. Yeah, right. I don't know. It was just such an
Sexy?
It just didn't work. It wasn't a title that worked, and I loved the book at the beginning, and then it fell apart and turned into a Hallmark movie. But I was trying to tell people about the book, and I couldn't remember the title. So it has to be memorable.
I read on a Kindle. I can never remember the title.
Wasn't that about the river of go? Because you
Yes.
used those exact, you
Yes.
first recommended it.
Yes. And then I wrote to you and said, don't.
You said, never mind. It's all
Yeah.
right."
Yeah. What's it called?
Something about the river is go.
Go as a river. Go as a river. Yeah.
I surely read.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember that title. Anyway, let's talk. But your titles, I love the titles of your books because they really, to me, speak to, your title, obviously, it's the literal accident that happened.
That's only one part of it.
Exactly. But the word accident then refers to so many other things and really reverberates. And for Jen, it's the same thing. It's the places they left behind. So it's the physical places they left behind. But then it's the emotional places they left behind. And it's the nooks and crannies of the relationship and the words that didn't get
You don't need us.
said.
You're going to do the whole spiel.
No, I want to know how you came up with your titles. I did not come up with the titles. I'm just telling you why they worked for me.
So when I was submitting this as a chapbook, the title was not this. The title was Crossroads, Neither Here Nor There. And it won as a finalist in a competition with amazing, amazing feedback from an editor. And I think it was around that time, and I don't know why, I just felt like it was too concrete. I'm a very literal reader and writer and don't do well with metaphor. And she's the queen of, I'm the flunky. And I didn't like how concrete that was. I wanted something more lyrical. And so I went through and reread from the beginning for the 1 millionth time, looking for words within my own text. So do you want me to read where it is? Or
Yeah.
No?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's midway through the book, Places Left Behind. One night we lie on the living room carpet, a habit we started after our first was born, and we removed our coffee table to cuddle and be closer to him on the floor. My boss called, Philippe says, reaching for my hand. We have to relocate, New York or Israel, or I'll lose my job. New York. Everyone's predicting the local .com bubble's going to bust, and I don't want to be unemployed. New York, I repeat, as long as we buy a house. The long, miserable, depressing year it took him to find his first job in high tech here was enough for me. I need to nest where I can manage mail, pay bills, and navigate healthcare in my mother tongue, where I can avoid the topic of suicide bombs altogether. In 2000, New York is relatively safe compared to Israel. Raising kids is hard enough. I'm overwhelmed when all three need me. I can't be a good parent unless I feel secure. I don't in Israel. Do you get it? He laces his fingers through mine. But I can't imagine leaving my parents again, I sob. I'm willing to move so you can keep your job, but I'm sick of feeling uprooted, never knowing how long we're staying. Our nonstop negotiations and mobile marriage continue. When Philippe had the jitters after our wedding a decade ago, he predicted our intractable conflict like a prophet. No matter where we reside, one of us will always rue the loss of the place we left behind. Oh. So I just felt like it was the right words to lift.
Super. You want to add anything about yours?
Yeah, I would just say my entire existence was an accident, and I do write about that. My parents were done having children. They were 40 and 44, and oops, my mom was pregnant with me, and so I never quite felt like I fit into my family. All my cousins were around my sister's age or my brother's age. My sister was 8 years older than me. My brother was 13 years older than me. And the book had a prologue, which I later dispensed with, in which I am visiting my cousin in Stamford, Connecticut, and she tells me that, in these exact words, your mother wanted to die when she found out she was pregnant with you. And so that was setting up the whole by accident thing, and like, why have I never felt like I fit in? And then I ended up thinking that was not a beginning, and that whole story didn't even belong in the book. But so it was this idea of my existence being an accident, and then that it took the accident, which interestingly enough in our family had always been Fred's parents' accident. For those of you who know me well or who've read the book, Fred's parents were killed in a collision with a drunk driver when he was 7. They were 38, both of them. So the accident was always this looming thing that we talked about. And then when my accident happened, there was a new accident. But it was through my recovery and what I call my post-traumatic growth that I came to a much greater understanding of who I am and how I want to live the rest of my life. So the whole thing was by accident, and I was shocked that there wasn't another book by that name. There wasn't. And I mean, of all the books and the millions of books that have been written in the world, nobody else had written a book called By Accident. So I thought, this is golden. And then a publisher said it has to have a subtitle. So we went round and round about what the subtitle would be. I wanted it to just be a memoir. And she said, nope, it's got to say more than that. It's got to tell me something about the memoir.
Why do you need to have a...
It's what's been
I think it's trendy.
It's what's happening right now. And I'm really happy with it. So I wasn't sure about the cover,
Tell
and now
them
I'm
the
really happy with the cover.
They don't know.
Oh, it's a memoir of letting go. And I think it resonates for a lot of readers because so many of us have a hard time letting go of whatever it is that we are trying to clutch onto, if it's our children or if it's control or
control of our
letting
children.
go of our control of our children, or this image of what our parents thought we were supposed to be, or we bought into, where our life was supposed to go. At the very end of the book, I have a prologue, where it's a couple of years later, and
An epilogue.
that's what it is. It's an epilogue. Where I talk about what I've learned and sort of the big takeaways. I say our lives are hard and messy, unpredictable and glorious, and it's our job to learn about ourselves, to learn what makes us unique and recharges our batteries so we can make meaning of our days, spread joy wherever we can, and contribute in some positive way to this colossal project known as life. Zoe, who in the book is my granddaughter, different name, but go with me. Zoe asks Alexa, the digital assistant she assumes is on duty, to play the song Let It Go from Frozen, a film she has yet to see. I delight in watching her sweep across our backyard, flailing her arms, twirling her tiny body, oblivious to how she's being perceived, to the impact that she is having on others. My heart overflows with deep pleasure as I witness her joy, her freedom, her purity, her creative expression, her natural ability to let it go. All is right. Maybe there are no accidents. So,
Amen.
yeah.
Okay, you guys have answered my question so beautifully. I'm going to ask you one final question and then open it up. And my final question is a question I love asking authors, which is, what is the riddle you're trying to solve?
You're presupposing that we're trying to solve a riddle.
I think all writers are in some way.
That's like Marion Roach. That's her thing.
Is it?
Yeah. X is something, Y is something. Yeah. Joanne, you can go first.
I'm
Not this one.
usually I'm not at a loss for words. This is a rare moment.
Yeah, this is a stumper, I know, but I decided I'd go for it. And if you want to think about it and get back to it later,
Sure.
I don't, you know.
Way later.
But there are some people who are just like, oh, the riddle I'm trying to solve is, they just know. So,
I mean, I don't know if this is the answer. The riddle I was trying to solve is why my husband and I stayed together.
Yeah.
there you have it.
Yeah.
And you did solve it.
Okay. Here you go.
How to let go.
Oh, okay. The riddle I was trying to solve, and I think I also did, is why was I born? Why did my parents have that third child? What was my purpose? And in learning, like maybe somehow somebody knew that neither of my siblings were going to make it out of their 60s, and there had to be one more person to carry the family traditions and carry the history and share the stories. Initially, one of the main reasons I was writing the book was to have something in print about my parents and my siblings that would go on, that all their children and grandchildren, and soon we're going to be into the great-grandchildren realm, and that they would be able to read it, and that absolutely has come true. I've had my nephews, I have 7 nephews, 6 now? I have a lot of nephews, and they've all read it, and it's
Keep
been
the
very
story
meaningful
alive.
to them to read about their parents and grandparents.
Great answers, ladies. Fabulous. Okay, I'm going to stop asking questions because
Judy had a question before. Do you remember what it was?
That was so long ago. Don't have a clue.
how long it took to write the book.
You know.
I know Joanne's answer because I went through it with her.
She sure did.
What's the answer?
So I had
I was 7 years from 2016 to 2023.
your book here. Joanne had already bought a few of you.
I have my books here.
Yeah.
My books are for sale.
Just to answer Mary, first of all, I'm not so good with dates. I was just sitting here marveling over your ability to go. In 2011, I did this. In 2018, like I have no clue. And the accident was in 2006. I don't think I started writing it was in, excuse me.
Not
the accident. Okay, my sister and my mother died in 2006. The accident was in 2012.
Right. Can I have my water?
Time hasn't gone now.
See, I'm really bad with dates, spatial
Thank you.
stuff, estimates of crowd size, can't do any of that. So I think I probably started writing in earnest like 2015 or something. I don't know. So 5+ years is what I would say for mine.
Okay, Dana had a question and then Judy.
Yeah, so did you know what your questions were when you were writing?
Did you know what you're right?
What your question
Oh,
was,
what your-
you know,
oh,
what
what's your question?
you know, riddle, the mystery, did you know that was?
Not really. As I wrote and as it all came together and more would come out, I would start to think, oh, this is really fitting together. There's really a narrative here. There's really a story here. So then I think I began to understand.
Yeah, and well, actually you said that, Megan said that you were asking the wrong question.
Jennifer? I wrote originally this first manuscript that was all about my marriage, starting in '89 up to about 2018. It was too long to try and tell that kind of a story. And what she was saying was, this isn't just about your marriage. Your journey is in here. What's your journey? So that's the point where I put that away. So this book that came second, so the second book, Landed, was really the book I was trying to find a publisher for when this other friend came to me saying you should submit to chapbook competitions, and this came to be. So this is the early material, and it's about my marriage, and it's about our search for home. So my elevator pitch is it's a love story with a lot of conflict, inner and personal, marital and geopolitical, about home.
But I'm going to say something about your question, Dana, because I don't know very many memoirists who know what their question is when they start writing. I mean, you tackle, whether it's an essay or an idea for doing a collection of essays or a book, you tackle it because you've got this call. You just have to do it. You can't not do it.
Compelled.
Yeah, you're compelled. Thank you. Yeah. But you often don't know what the hell your question is. You know, it takes writing and rewriting and then linking material together and circling around to start knowing your themes and knowing your questions. I mean, to me, that's one of the beauties of writing memoir is that you find out. Sue Williams-Silverman, who I quote all the time, she was one of our advisors, and she's a published author. She's a wonderful writer. And, you know, she says the reason she loves writing memoirs because she it's not until after she writes the story that she figures out what the story means to her. She doesn't really understand it until she writes it. And again, that's the cocktail party talk. You're not really knowing the meaning of the story and how it's, you know, churning and affecting you or changing your life. You're just telling a story. So I'd like to meet the memoirist who knows her questions when she starts. I'd love to meet her.
You could meet her. She's Mary right over there. Well, didn't you know?
I did.
Yep.
But it's a sobriety memoir, so I had a little head start.
But you did. So, I mean, I think it happens. You're welcome. It's a wonderful book. It's not published yet, but we'll have an event like this when it is.
Oh, good.
I'll host it.
Good.
Okay, I'm gonna remember that.
Judy, you had a question.
Or a comment or something. Joanne, you said something, and before you started talking, one of my questions was always about, why do you want to write about your life or a memoir, and why should I want to read it? Because, you know, you pick up a book to read, and the reader needs to be feeling like they're part of this, whether the book is good or not. But so you said something about that, Joanne, in the middle of your conversation about how you changed the things and you were concerned about the reader. But it almost, I'm not at all versed in anything about the structure or whatever about memoir, but it seems at first it's sort of like therapy, and for yourself, for the writer, and yet, what is it?
Nobody wants to read that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But in yours, and I've read other, it's like it is compelling to the reader because there are pieces of yourself like, oh, yeah, that connects with me, you know, like how you're describing, Jennifer. Like, I've been married for 52 years. Like, how did that ever happen? You know,
She knows her question.
you've been happily married? Well, if you add up all the days, maybe 2. But somehow, out of both of your work and your craft, it has resonance. So how do you know that that's going to happen?
You want to answer?
How do you know that it's going to happen, that it's going to resonate for people?
For the reader.
For the reader.
Well, first of all, keeping it in mind that you want the reader to be able to find herself or himself in it, you have to keep that in mind so that you're not just telling your story. You're telling a story with universal truths.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So Sue William Silverman, who Megan just mentioned, one of our mentors at Vermont College of Fine Arts, talked a lot about the voice of experience, where there's 2 voices. There's the voice of innocence that you're writing in. It's not voice of innocence. Innocence isn't necessarily a child's voice, but it's the voice during the moment of the scene. And then the voice of experience is what a memoirist is working with to make meaning of that which happened. And I think it's when that writer is spending time figuring out what that means and sharing it. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. It doesn't have to be a page, a chapter, or a paragraph. It can be a sentence. And then hopefully the writer in rereading his or her work gets the chills maybe. And then I think that's your clue that a reader might also. It's there to me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
But I mean,
it's the perspective. You have a different perspective, which is why, for instance, I knew I couldn't start writing this in the first few years after. I knew I might want to tell this story, that I thought I had a crazy story with all these losses and then the series of things that happened afterwards. I needed the distance. I needed to really internalize the lessons before I could figure out a way to transmit that in any meaningful way.
One of the books we memoirists read is called The Situation and the Story by an author named Vivian Gornick. And that's what this book is all about. Just because you have a situation doesn't mean you have a story. And I know one of my advisors at school, one of her lines was like, well, so what? Like, make me give a damn. Like, why should I care? And so what are you going to do to make somebody care about your story and take it beyond it being you just, thumping at your own heart and reliving your own whatever it is, drama, trauma, mishaps, regret, whatever. So, there are people who feel that the genre of memoir is, I don't know, what's the word I can use for it? Yeah, like not really.
Staring at your pupic.
Yeah. Not really a true genre unto itself. But I actually contend that true life is often even more unbelievable than fiction. And so I think if we can harness that and write well about it and be mindful of craft while we're writing and not be self-absorbed while we're writing, great art comes out of it.
I'm going to add one more thing, that just addresses that. I also think, in addition to situation and story, voice of experience, voice of innocence, I think for me what happened in the later stages of revision was the understanding that I couldn't just reveal the flaws of any of the other characters. I had to turn the camera on myself. I think this is incumbent upon every memoirist, and reveal my own underbelly. Like, really, really important. Because I'm far from perfect here. I am also to blame. I need to own my part of the story. So I think that's huge.
Awesome. We have another question.
I just wanted to comment, so much of what you're saying is resonating with me. My husband's memoir is being written in the beginning stages by our daughter. He suffered PTSD, he realized as a child, childhood trauma. And just so much of what you're saying is what is going on with the questions. I mean, she's interviewing him every week. I don't know if they know exactly, what question is going to be answered by this memoir, but they're working on it. And the only thing is that I don't think they want to have it for public consumption.
Fair.
Yeah.
Which I know, Joanne, you sort of you changed
Yeah.
how you felt about that.
Yeah, partway through.
Yeah, I have a lot of students who just want to write family stories for their families, I mean, people don't always want to publish. It's
I think my husband might have preferred if I hadn't tried to publish.
So anyway, I may have my daughter contact you. She's actually a terrific writer, but maybe she can connect with you.
Sure.
For both of you, was it hard for you to write your partners as flawed people?
No.
That was a fast answer.
Mine is asleep about 7,000 miles away, so I can answer. That said, correct.
Joanne's is in the room.
No, but I'm happy to answer.
No, but that said, I actually think, and this is a lot of feedback I'm getting from people, I actually think so my husband was very petrified to read this before I sent it to the press to have a developmental edit. Petrified that I'd portrayed him as a villain. Petrified. And I tried to explain to him I hadn't. And I tried to explain to him something that I learned from a writer named William Zinsser, who's no longer around, who was an amazing, amazing writer of fabulous American stories. Do you know that name? Writing well.
We quote him in our interview.
Yes,
he's quoted in our interview.
Because I love him.
Yeah.
He said at a talk that I heard him speak at in New York, where I used to take writing classes called the Hudson Valley Writers Center. He said more or less, if you're writing villainous characters, if you're writing to get revenge, you're writing for the wrong reasons. So I was never intending to try and get revenge in telling the story. And what ended up happening is really kind of a love letter to my husband. And I'm pretty sure he understands that. He saw that.
Well, I read both your books, and first of all, Joanne, your husband is like
an
an angel. And he's like the perfect husband.
He's pretty good.
And you're incredibly discreet. You did not reveal. I mean, you revealed, but in a very measured kind of way. And I thought you were really very respectful.
I know it's a shame.
Joanne, you can answer the question.
So I would say early on, very early on, you said to me, you need to make everyone fall in love with Fred. Do you remember saying that?
Gosh, I'm like some kind of what is it about me?
She said that, and I thought, early on, very early on, like early iteration, 4 years ago or something, Megan said to me, you really need to make the reader fall in love with Fred.
You kind of did.
She listened to me.
Why?
I did, well, also I did not write things that were not true. I left out some things that would have made him look less perfect. We got so much closer through all of this strife and grew as a couple and as individuals. So that's part of what I wanted to tell, is how through adversity can come growth. And I think that I had, what I affectionately term post-traumatic growth, because it's like you don't have to assume that you have PTSD, right? You don't, yes, I had trauma reaction and post trauma reaction. Help me, therapists in the room. But a friend of mine said, you don't have to have PTSD. And that was so liberating because it's like, oh, there's no sentence here. It's not like a definitive thing. So, no, it wasn't hard at all writing about him. It just flowed, and there's nothing in there that, sometimes I would have to recreate a conversation that had happened 7 years earlier, so I don't know that I'm saying the exact words, but it's to the best of my recollection.
So let me ask both of you, do your husbands read? What did he say?
I need to chime in for a second.
And now that would be an appropriate time.
Generally, I would not. It's been really weird how people are reacting to the book and coming up. We went out to dinner with a couple, and when we were already at the table, and this couple walks in, I walk up and I go to give the woman a hug, and she goes, "I love you," and I said, "I love you too." And she goes, "Oh no, I finished the book." Very funny. This is getting weird. So I had a conversation with our son and daughter-in-law. Joanne wasn't there. I was down at their house.
Wait, which one?
In L.A. Mike and Chester.
Oh.
And I'm sorry.
In the book, Max and Blair.
And, so I was telling them how people are reacting and how weird it is for me. And my daughter-in-law, she's incredible. She said, the reason people are falling in love with you is because Joanne showed your flaws and how you grew through them. Like, God.
It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, right.
I don't remember any flaws.
Oh, I can tell you.
I'm reading it.
So did your husbands read drafts as you went along with your book?
A little bit. I mean, not like late. Yeah.
And Philippe didn't read until the very end,
Till the
right?
weekend before I had to submit it to the developmental editor. He was petrified. Yeah. I wanted to actually comment on something you just said. How difficult I actually found, how it did not help my marriage writing the first book, the one that she read, the whole story of the marriage, going back into photo albums, going back into letters, going back into journals. I was really like in my head and reliving everything, and it was my story, and it did not do well for my marriage. And so it was one of a different mentor we actually shared, Patrick, who had suggested that I write about my marriage, and I kind of felt like, well, wow, no one ever said how hard this would be to go back in time and relive all of this. And we're not talking abuse, none of that. There's no abuse in this story. But I didn't want to go back in time and relive what I'd been through. And I did, in a way. So I only got to like this happy place on the other side, like years later.
I wonder if you had to write the first thing to get there.
Yeah.
I was wondering about the publication and the editing. How was that experience? Trying to find an editor, somebody to publish it, and also what was it like? Because I know it's very difficult.
So when you're writing about Israel, I'll focus less on the marriage and more about like, there's a lot of Israel in this story. I'm going to just say it like this, kind of a blanket statement. I don't think your average American publisher is so interested in that. I think that they more want to stay away from it. And so it was no surprise to me that I signed with a European-based publisher. I mean, they're really, virtual. So it's an American who lives in Munich, Germany, and an Australian who lives in Athens, Greece. It's called Vine Leaves Press, small press. It's not hybrid. Everyone know what hybrid means?
No.
How do you define hybrid?
Well, so there's traditional publishers where usually you get an agent, or you didn't get an agent, but you can pitch directly, and you get an advance.
No.
No. So why don't you explain?
So
I can explain the other two.
Okay. So traditional publisher, I didn't have an agent. Again, my material and the way I approached the material, which is unconventional prose, was not agent friendly. I mean, like I knew it. I knew between the content and the form, it wasn't agent friendly. It was a hard sell. So the fact that I ended up with these two women living outside of America does not surprise me at all. Both my books are with them. And I don't know, I haven't tallied how many rejections I had before I signed with them for the book landed, because that was what I was trying to pitch before this happened. But a lot of rejection. You can't do this until you're able to, like, thick-skinned enough to face that rejection. And I didn't want to work with a hybrid press, so that's where you put a huge chunk of money in and you get more royalties per book. Because I just was in this traditional publishing world from the MFA, I think. I think that's what influenced me more than anything. Yeah.
The hybrid press, which Esty also has published with, and Penny is about to publish with. She Writes Press. It's based in Berkeley. It's got a really, really solid reputation. They publish 50 books every spring, 50 every fall, all women, and the press is all staffed, owned, run, staffed, everything by women, which I found to be unbelievably refreshing. And it felt like everyone throughout the process was invested in my success. I did pay them a chunk of money up front, and then I also pay for the printing of every book and for the editing and for all the marketing and publicity, and I'm sure I'm leaving out something else that I paid for because it's basically just money out. But then I make 60% of the net of the book instead of, like, usually it would be 10% or something. I'm 40. You're 40. Well, so that's a very unusual situation, yeah. But do you have full are they distributing it?
Yeah.
Great.
So what makes it hybrid? Why is it called hybrid?
So because self-publishing is the third thing. And if you self-publish, you can do that too, but you don't get professional distribution. She Writes Press distributes with a very well-known and large distributor, so they have a sales force, and it's getting into stores and libraries, and it's very available. Any store can order it, and I wanted that. I wanted it.
Okay, hold on. I will say this. And so with Vine Leaves Press, it's not, okay, so here's what you read in the FAQ before you sign the contract that you don't understand until after you're in it, which is that the books are not returnable. And so most bookstores stay away from ordering books, even though they're distributed through Ingram, probably the same distributor,
Ingram,
right? That's one of the biggest distributors.
It's PGW, Publishers Group West, is a division of Ingram.
Right. So it's distributed through one of the major distributors, and that's great. But because they're not returnable, because there is no house to return them to, because it's a woman in Munich, Germany, and a woman in Athens, Greece, bookstores don't want to go near them. If I lived locally and had a bookstore at my local whatever, I would approach them and say, hey, would you please carry my book? And they might say, sorry, we can get it through Ingram, but it's not returnable, but you can leave it on consignment. And so I could have this be part of a consignment program where I maybe get them to buy 10 or 5, and if they don't sell within 3 months or 6 months, I go pick them up. But I live in Tel Aviv, so I don't have that ease to do that. So you actually can't find my book in a traditional bookstore here. That's a cannot. Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's it.
That's a big difference.
That's a big difference.
Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble.
What do you prefer? If you could...
If I could go over and do it again?
No. Where would you prefer us?
Tonight, please.
Okay.
I bought in the Coming to America, I bought 300 books to sell like Girl Scout cookies. I'm here to sell my Girl Scout cookies. The flavor is Places We Left Behind. Please.
Judy has another question.
What you were saying, Joanne, is that I went to my little bookstore in Jackson, Wyoming, and said, can you get me by accident? And they, went online and said, sure, and it'll be here at the end of the week.
I love that.
Okay,
that happened.
I'd like to add to that.
Doesn't it make you feel good, Penny?
So I'd like to add to that and say you can go to your local bookstore, Wyoming, Copperfield, whatever, and ask for it. It helps me. Or your library. It totally helps me.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would love that if you did that. But I'd also love it if you bought the book tonight.
And then she wants you to write a review.
Right. Megan's
Give it, but
bookstore.
only a 5-star. Doesn't matter.
That's not fair. That's not.
Sue, you had another question.
Is the press publicizing your book, or how are you getting publicity?
It's called Shameless Self-Promotion. I was a full-time writer. I am now a full-time publicist for myself.
But you do that through
Myself.
events like
I run Israel Writer Studio,
Oh.
and I teach in Israel, but I put together a 5-week, I'm in California for 3 in the Bay Area. Tomorrow night I'm at the Jewish Community Library. Last night I was at a private event in Piedmont. Last week at Sausalito Books for the Bay. Rockridge Library on Saturday, like at my temple, my childhood temple next week. All kinds of different events. Interviews, talks, all kinds of stuff. Today I taught yoga and writing for the 92nd Street Y on Zoom. I've pulled everything out of my literal sleeves.
And do they have
And
an
metaphorical.
expectation that you'll sell a certain number of
No. It's just, no, me. Just me.
Yeah.
My dreams.
Barbara.
Has a question.
Did you ever feel when you were writing, like this is a thing for me, that I'm not sure that I want my husband to come across it and read it casually? Like I want it to be like secure till at least a certain point. Like I'm not necessarily, like I want to explore for myself at least things that I like I have shame around, or I have this or that emotion around.
Uh-huh.
And I don't necessarily, until I process it, want anybody else to see it. Have you ever been through anything like
Sure. You could be with my husband, he won't read it. He doesn't like reading true stories because he knows the ending. So like, what's the point?
You know, Stephen King believes, if you read his memoir about writing, which is fantastic, you know, he says every writer should just lock themselves in a room and write their entire book without having anybody else look at it. No feedback at all.
That sounds like fun.
And it's a very different experience. And I think that for him, it works really well. And I also think there are writers who get so much feedback, it's overwhelming. And I think that can take you off in directions that...
I definitely got conflicting feedback, and then
Right.
you have to really trust
Right.
yourself.
Right.
And, say, well, no, I really don't agree with that. So thank you, but I'm not going to use that, or I'm going to do something different. I think I'm a very unboundaried person and very open, and so I don't have that as much as maybe some other people do. But I know what you're talking about, and I have felt it in moments. Yeah.